Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton. This is Inside Scoop Virginia, and we are talking about mental health tonight. And we have two new guests who are going to talk about some grassroots efforts in trying to help people who have mental illness and help educate us. I have immediately to my left Ellie Hoptman. She is a graduate from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and you're now getting your master's degree, I guess, clinical mental health counseling at GW.
That's right.
An intensive program. You were diagnosed with bipolar disorder back when you were a teenager, and we're going to talk about that. You grew up in the Northern Virginia area.
Yep, Vienna.
In Vienna itself. Perfect. And you are all involved with the NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Health and Mental Illness,
Yes.
Northern Virginia.
Yes.
I'm going to get the whole thing done. You're a peer mentor. We're going to talk about what that is. You're involved in this Ending the Silence program.
Great.
And I want to hear all about that.
Okay.
So welcome.
Thank you.
And then we also have Jeanne Comeau, who is the executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Health for Northern Virginia, which is the local chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And you became involved through the family-to-family programs that get run. That's right. And we're going to talk about that. You're also a Northern Virginia native, went to Woodson High School and then George Mason University with an interesting degree for this kind of work in electrical and computer engineering. I saw that and I thought, okay, well, we'll see how that helps out. So it was interesting, but thank you for taking time to come, to both of you, and talk with us about this kind of issue. We had Delegate Patrick Hope on, who was talking a little bit about what they're trying to do down in the General Assembly. But what I want to find out is, what does NAMI in Northern Virginia actually do? Because there is this NAMI at the national level, and there's this NAMI at the Virginia level, state levels, and then there's the Northern Virginia piece. So what is it, Jeanne, that you do?
We at NAMI Northern Virginia, which is, as you mentioned, the local affiliate of NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, we provide education programs, support groups, and events that help support individuals who are living with mental illness and also family members. And in addition, we reach out to many groups in the community. So students, for example, police officers, we're part of their crisis intervention team training and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of work that we do to support the community.
Okay. Now, how did you get into this? It was the family-to-family sessions that they have. Tell us about that. Tell us how you got involved.
I was involved because I was trying to support one of my children who was exhibiting some symptoms that I didn't quite understand and didn't know how to support him. So I looked around for support groups and that type of thing, and I finally located NAMI and was really thrilled to learn about their family-to-family program. And what that is a 12-week class, and you learn more about what mental illnesses are, what to look for, what the medications are, also some local supports, what's available in the community as far as the Community Services Board and that type of thing. And it's just a really supportive class, and from there then you have a lot more opportunity to know how to advocate for your child and what to look for.
Well, Ellie, now you had this diagnosis, but how did you end up getting involved in NAMI?
Well, I got involved with the NAMI, interestingly enough, through a web search. I wanted to get more involved in the line of work that I am so passionate about and also affects me so greatly. And I saw that they had a race, a walk, actually, it's not a race. And I went and got involved. I coordinated a little team. It's their fundraiser for the local affiliate. Okay. And I was just so impressed with the energy and the enthusiasm and just sort of the general mission of NAMI Northern Virginia that I jumped on board 2 feet quickly as I possibly could, just kind of hit the ground running. So, and it's also really important to me that I give back in an area where I've gotten so much help. So.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that, but one of the things I wanted to follow up on, Jeanne, is you mentioned the symptoms. So what are the symptoms? If you are, I read some statistics someplace that said 1 in 5 youth between the ages of 13 and 18 will start exhibiting signs of mental illness, and that 75% of the people will experience it by the age of 24. When I read that age 14, I thought to myself, how do you tell whether your child is having mental illness issues or it's just your usual hormonal problems with teenagers and rebellions and just regular old acting out that, of course, is just everywhere, that everyone always is talking about and always complaining about when kids hit that teenage year. What are the symptoms? What do people need to be looking for?
It is a challenge because, like you said, children have a wide range of emotions and behaviors and that sort of thing. But I think that, and this is why I appreciate NAMI, because you can sort of compare notes with other parents and start to figure out yourself, knowing your child and what you're hearing, what is sort of normal and what maybe needs some looking into. So, for example, sometimes children that age group can have hallucinations and are hearing voices, but it may not be to that extent. Sometimes children as young as 3 will report having sleep difficulty, and that's something to take seriously because sometimes that's a symptom. They may not even be exhibiting other behaviors at that point. Children age 18 to 13, there are 21% of children in that age group who experience mental illness severe enough that it's disrupting their daily lives. So I think that if your child is not doing well in school or is not maintaining friendships or is having challenges that seem to go beyond what the normal childhood challenges are, then trust your instincts as a parent and reach out to other parents for that support, because you don't always get that in the broad world, that support, that to trust your instincts.
Well, and that's the kind of thing, particularly if it's your first child, where you basically have no idea what you're doing anyway.
Right.
But that concept of, is it normal? Is that what one of the benefits is of the family-to-family meetings? Because what's normal, and you don't usually sit around and have a cup of coffee with your neighbor and say, by the way, I'm wondering about my kid. I mean, you don't do that. So is that the place where people who are concerned ought to be checking out the website and
That's
figuring
exactly
out to go?
right. And there's another resource too. There's a second class called Basics, and that was designed more specifically towards parents of children, school-age children. So for example, children who are grade school through 12th, and it's a shorter class and designed with parents in mind, and it does talk a little bit more about the special needs that families face, including if your child needs an IEP, an individual education plan, something to that extent. And then we also have support groups. So if a family wants to go every week or a couple times a month, that sort of thing, they can go year-round for a support group. And as you said, exactly, it's a place to go safely talk about what's going on. And the other exciting thing is you walk into a room full of people who know exactly what you're talking about before you open your mouth, and it's just very supportive.
So what do you actually look for, though? I mean, if I have a kid who I would look and say, well, he's spending all of his time in his room, or he's spending all of his time on his computers, or is that something that should cause people alarm, or does it need to be coupled with something else, like with grades dropping, or they're no longer playing sports, or they're, to me, that's kind of like a difficult thing. I mean, you had this when you were a teenager.
I was a teenager, yeah. So I think the first red flag is sleep. Once that starts getting disrupted, lots of things can go wrong. So if irregular sleep patterns are happening, that's something to definitely pay attention to. You'd be surprised by how much sleep can just kind of throw everything out of whack. So
that's a huge issue, I know, in Fairfax. They've got that sleep coalition saying you need to let the people in high school start later so they can sleep more. I don't think anybody ever really thought that it would affect people's mental health.
Well, it more affects if there's a condition there. So if there is a condition there and you notice and you're thinking, maybe I should get something checked out, and you're noticing the sleep is off, you're noticing the mood is off, the interest is lacking, either a great increase in appetite, a decrease in appetite. For me, I stopped eating. And I was actually misdiagnosed as anorexic, but I wasn't sleeping. I was upset. There were other things that should have been paid attention to that people kind of got the signals and wires crossed. So I think the first thing I would look for is the first thing I would say is trust your instincts. I mean, my parents kept pushing, kept trying to figure out exactly what it was and weren't taking no for an answer. And I think, they, even though they had raised my older sister ahead of me, she hadn't experienced anything like I was experiencing. And I think that even if they hadn't had my older sister, they would have known, okay, something's off. I mean, I think it's very, very rare where you have an instance, and correct me if I'm wrong, an instance where it's just so out of the blue and extreme. I think if you're paying attention to your child and loving your kid the way parents should, something's going to pop up.
It's true. The sleep, as Ellie said, and also a lot of people notice, the teen years, they kind of say, well, drug use and alcohol use is kind of goes along with the territory, but not necessarily. And many people of all ages living with mental illness self-medicate, and so that could be another symptom or another sign that something, someone is trying to seek relief and they're not getting it. Also, if they're not able to continue to participate in sports or their friendships, they're having, they come home and report that their friends, are complaining about their behavior is something that you see sometimes. And so, just reaching out at that point is very important.
Okay, so we hopefully people sort of pay attention. I'm a little concerned when you were saying you got misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And I do sort of wonder what kind of training like pediatricians have. I mean, it would seem that they ought to have some kind of specialized training if mental illness symptoms can come so early in children's lives. But I'm thinking back, my sons are 30 and 25, but I don't remember any kind of concept with the pediatrician, never asked me about any of these kinds of things. It was just, it never would have occurred to me well, thankfully I didn't need to, but they didn't inquire. I mean, is that a lacking in their training, or is this something people need to be more aware of, or one of those you need to be your own advocate? I mean, how does it work?
I would say that with, my pediatrician definitely failed me in sort of trying to figure out what was going on. But I would say that a lot of it has to do with educating yourself and educating your family and reaching out to the resources that NAMI and other organizations like NAMI provide. Because a pediatrician is an MD, so they have a huge knowledge base, but like you said, they're not specialized in any sort of pediatric mental health necessarily. So making sure that you can report to them what's going on rather than waiting for them to ask you, I think is huge.
And I think that's where, being a strong parent advocate comes in, because if you think something's, needs to be looked at more deeply, you can ask your pediatrician for a referral, because they typically do have a relationship or know of some good, but they may not necessarily make that referral unless you're really aware of what's going on and really asking for it, as Ellie said, like her parents did.
Well, we're going to go to break, and then we will be coming back to continue this conversation. Stay with us.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. One of some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke, give it a try. Don't play with matches, don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rigged out money, nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches, don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters. collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. This is Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host, and we are talking about mental health, mental illness, and we are here with Ellie Hoptman and Jeanne. Oh gosh, Jeanne, I'm going to get it wrong. Comeau. I look at it and it looks French, and I'm like, but is it French? Let's talk some more about high school and your particular circumstance, Ellie, because you were diagnosed when you were in high school. Mm-hmm. But what was all of that like? You've said your parents were really persistent, and there were some misdiagnoses, but you, on your side of this, what was that whole episode like as a young person? And what was school like, and friends, and that type of thing? What was all of that like?
Well, just as a background, so I was diagnosed when I was 15 with bipolar disorder, and it started probably in October of my sophomore year with the manic episodes, and then starting around Christmas, I just crashed, and that's when I went into the depressive state that things sort of started, okay, we have to do something. She's not just really animated, really energetic. There's something going on here. And so for someone suffering from major depression or a depressive episode in bipolar disorder, it's the single most lonely experience. No matter how great your support team is, your family is, it's the single most lonely experience you can ever imagine, because you feel like no one can relate to you. Especially, I mean, as a teenager, you have that sort of personal fable anyways, where you believe that you're incredibly unique no matter what anyone else has to say. So then you throw in mental illness in the picture, and you feel like no one's ever going to be able to relate to you in your entire life. You have no concept of, okay, this is going to last for X number of days or Y number of weeks or Z number of months. I mean, there's not really a way of knowing that anyways. So this great unknown, and it's just lonely and miserable. I laugh because laugh or cry. But but as a school age teenager, my friends didn't know what to do. So they didn't do anything.
Now, did they think there was something wrong, or they just didn't say anything? Or?
Well, I think my friends originally noticed that I had a lot more energy when I was more manic, but they thought it was fun.
Right.
And then when I started getting depressed is when they started jumping ship. So they didn't really, I don't blame them. I mean, it's really hard to deal with depression at any age, but when you have no education on how to deal with it at 15, 14, it's even harder. So because I believe they didn't have any base knowledge of what they were looking at and what they were dealing with, they just decided not to deal with it. So you take the lonely experience of depression and you lose all your friends in school, and it just compounds itself. And I ended up actually having to leave school because I just couldn't take it. I mean, people could not relate to me on any level. So I ended up leaving and going to a day treatment center, sort of like part hospital, part school, more just like a structured environment that you'd have somewhere to go during the day that's not school with your peers that you just have nothing to talk to about and don't even want to talk. I mean, I didn't even want to talk to them, so.
So when you left school, had you gotten the diagnosis already, so
Yes.
people knew what it was?
I left school springtime, and I got my diagnosis in January. So it had been a while. And you know what was great was my guidance counselor. I'm actually in school with a bunch of school counselors right now, and they have extensive mental health training now. And my guidance counselor in high school, I swear he saved my life. I mean, he was in the classroom, he was getting work from my teachers, he was advocating for me when it was time to leave school. He helped me leave school. I mean, he was the greatest advocate at Madison High School.
Really? I wondered about that because you see so many of the counselors and so many of the school psychologists talking about there are just too many kids, and how helpful are they when it's a real crisis?
Well, he was a good one. I mean, he was a gem. I think that there are a lack of gems in the school system, or they're gems but they can't reach their potential because they're so bogged down with paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape. I mean, there's so much that school counselors have to handle, from not even mental illness. I mean, college applications and recommendation letters. I mean, there's just a lot on their plate.
So you went to this special program.
Yes,
did you,
at Children's Hospital. It's a day treatment facility.
And so did you stay there for years?
I was there for two weeks. Yeah.
Oh, so it was short term.
Yeah, and then Fairfax County does this wonderful thing. Well, they'll do homebound instruction for kids that qualify. They have to be sick, and they have to be a certain meet certain qualifications, and they'll actually send trained teachers to your home until you're able to return to school. So I didn't return to school until my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important message for kids to hear, as well as parents, because I think there was a perception in the past that, oh, I'm going into the hospital and that's it for the rest of my life. And now, as you can see, 2 weeks can really make a big difference in someone's life. And,
Huge.
And there's hope, and people recover and lead wonderful lives.
Yeah.
And that's the whole message that, we bring through our program. So.
Yeah.
Well, and that is a huge issue, because particularly, and you said it, you can't estimate how long is this going to last. And as a young person, you don't have any kind of life experience to say, okay, I can get through this kind of thing if it goes on. So that notion of, yes, there is hope, there is a way out of this, I think is a really important message, because a lot of people don't feel that way. And
I agree.
I read some statistic about the youth at risk surveys that they do in the Fairfax schools, and the number of fully a third of the people in 10th grade and people in 12th grade have said that they have been so depressed for at least 2 weeks in a row that they couldn't function. And that's 1 out of every 3 students in those grades are feeling that way. That's an enormous amount of anxiety and depression and just non-functioning people.
And they don't talk about it.
Right.
And that's where I think peer education and just education programs in general are so important right now.
Well, tell me about this Ending the Silence program, because you're involved in that. What is that? That's something you go to the schools to do? What's involved?
It's a new program in Northern Virginia, but it's a NAMI program that takes, there's one young adult presenter, which is me, and then another partner. And we go in and there's an extensive PowerPoint presentation where we give the basics of this is what mental illness is, but it has sort of components to it that will capture the attention of a adolescent or school-age child. So they'll talk about current celebrities that also have the same diagnosis, and there'll be interactive piece and some sort of incentive for participation. And it's supposed to design to, I guess, educate schools and kids on what it looks like, what to look for, and how they can help.
Right.
It's supposed to end the stigma and get people to talk about it. Because if you talk about it, you're much more likely to get treatment for it and find out is there a real problem.
Well, and so is this done you do this in health classes? Are you getting a good reception? How does if somebody out there has a child in, Madison High School where you went, or down at Langley where they had those 2 people, 2 students who killed themselves a few weeks back. How do they get this in? Does it have to be the principal who invites you in? I mean, how does that work?
We've had a variety of ways. Anybody can contact us at NAMI Northern Virginia to request a presentation. We depend on our volunteers, so we have to work with their schedules. But we actually started doing something similar through our In Our Own Voice presentation, which is 2 presenters who share their stories. And now that this program is available for the high schools, we've moved to that for that age group, so they can contact us. And people offer it anywhere from through their health classes, through school-wide assemblies. We've had one at Fairfax High School where several hundred children attended, and the guidance counselors reported a great increase in the numbers of visits they had from students, which was exciting to us because it meant that they were seeking help for themselves or their friends or a family member and that sort of thing. So we've seen it just been a wonderful program.
Well, let's talk about what you should do. If you are a young person and you see these kinds of changes in your friends, where you see the whole manic thing, and everybody always thinks, oh, manic must be great because you're getting stuff done, you're doing stuff. But then you go right over that edge, and at some point in time, you're going to get that flip side. And of course, the people who are merely depressed don't get the mannequin, they're just depressed.
Right.
So you see somebody who is depressed, whose behavior has started to change, who doesn't seem to have any interest in doing things, not just doing things that they used to do, but doing pretty much anything. What should a young person do?
Well, I can say what I would do. What I would like to have happened when I was younger is I would love to have someone come up to me and just say, hey, what's going on? And if I don't feel like responding, then I don't feel like responding. But it's just knowing that someone out there cares is a big deal. It's a big deal. And knowing that someone is there for you, even if you don't want them, just knowing that they're there is a huge comfort. And I also think that if you're concerned and enough, you should definitely tell a trusted adult, a guidance counselor, a favorite teacher. If you have a close relationship with the parents, talk to the parents, say, hey, I've noticed that my friend is starting to behave differently in school. What's going on, Mrs. Smith? You know, just sort of take an active interest and don't be pushy or persistent because it's a sensitive issue.
Right.
There is that stigma piece. But having someone to talk to and having someone who's compassionately caring for you is a huge thing. So I would say that if it's someone you're close to, I would say reach out. I would say if it's someone that you are noticing is really struggling, go to an adult quickly. But not just any adult, one that you know will step in there and make a difference, because I think if you go to the right person, you can really go a long way.
And I think that extends to parents too. How do you respond as a parent? Because I remember as a parent sort of oscillating between, I want to support my child, and getting the messages from the school system and the community saying, well, you know, you just got to tell them to buck up and do a better job. And it was very difficult because I was confused myself. I didn't have enough information. And I remember I learned so much from my son, who's the individual who's in my family who's struggling, and he once turned to me and said, Mom, don't you think if I could, I would?
Exactly.
Because he wanted to succeed.
Yeah.
And it was just a really good lesson and reminder for me that this child wanted to, you know, go to college and have a wonderful job, and if he was struggling, there was a reason, and I needed to figure out what it was. And so I think, you know, what I've learned over the years too is just saying, I believe in you, I support you, and just, you know, maintaining that hope as a parent just as much as friends. So,
well, let's talk, because we've got about 30 seconds left. You have monthly meetings. You've got all this support structure. I was very impressed. What's your website? Where can people go to get more information?
Our website is www.nami-northernvirginia.org. And that's the way to reach out to us for any of our programs, to get involved with our support groups. And also we have a wonderful walk. It's going to be held at the Tyson's Corner Center on September 20th. And that's a fun day of awareness and fundraising, of course, for us. And so we hope you'll come on out and join us then too.
Well, I appreciate both of you coming, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.